I'm in Borough Market and look at this array of oysters, now served as a delicacy with a glass of something sparkling.
But the humble sea creature, once considered a cheap source of protein for Londoners, is now facing an uncertain future.
He hasn't lost his knack. That's a clean oyster shucking nose.
The Howard family have been cultivating and selling oysters since the 1700s. Richard and his son Tom are 7th and 8th generation oystermen.
This is a pocketbook which my 4th great-grandfather William Howard had, and this is a record of all the sales he did of oysters into Billingsgate Market. And you can see here, William Howard Senior, Mersey Island, April 30th, 1791. But what amazes me, there's a record in here, £530. It's about 70 grand if you convert it to today. So he's making more money than we are now.
But oyster fishing in West Mersey has seen a dramatic decline.
Back in the 1800s, there was something like 150 boats catching oysters in the River Blackwater, and you think now there's about, what, half a dozen boats? So these are the rock oysters. So these are the oysters we sell all year round.
What's the best way to eat it? With a bit of lemon or lime?
I would say with just a little bit of lemon juice or a little bit of lime. The acid draws the flavours to the top. It's like a seasoning.
That is a delicious taste of the sea. Fabulous.
Rock oysters, introduced to our waters in the 1960s, are thriving. But it's a very different story for this species.
The native oysters were once a common sight right across London, but now they're an endangered species, already extinct in parts of Europe.
Human intervention is the last hope. Now oyster catchers and conservationists are joining forces. These empty shells are being returned home to help save the next generation of native oysters. Nestled in the Thames estuary lies the Blackwater River in Essex. Oysters have been found here since Roman times.
I'm here today to help build the UK's largest native oyster sanctuary, and to do that, I'm going to use these discarded shells from Borough Market.
When I was a young child, I walked on those flats and I marvelled at the native oyster. And I fell in love with the estuary. And I've never left it, and I never will.
For the past 65 years, Alan Bird has been catching oysters here in West Mersey.
When I first started, we pulled the dredges up by hand. There was no winches, there were no electronics, and it was hard work, it was. There were many old boys of 60, 70, 80 years old still doing it. And all I've done is followed in their footsteps.
Alan fears that without action, he could be the last generation fishing for oysters.
Well, native oyster beds are the most threatened marine habitat in Europe. And through a combination of overfishing, disease, water quality, pollution, we've basically gone back to the last 5% of the numbers.
ZSL, together with the oyster catchers, are now creating a safe habitat for the native oyster to breed.
We're trying to rebuild the population, and we're trying to sort of seed the wider marine environment so that we get healthy oyster stocks back.
An area of 2 square kilometres right beneath us has been marked out as the new sanctuary. A few weeks ago, preparations began with the laying of the culch.
Explain what culch is, Alison.
So culch is basically old shell, and culch is what we need for oysters to settle on. So what we're doing with the Oysterman is getting the old shell and putting it back on the seabed so that new oysters can settle on it and start to grow again.
Because I suppose around here it's very muddy and very sandy, and there's nothing for them to grab any purchase.
No, exactly.
Recycled oyster shells are then added on top of the culch.
What I've got here is a whole pile of empty, discarded shells from Borough Market. So I'm going to add those to the collection.
Today, the important task is collecting the mother native oysters to put into the new sanctuary.
We're just dredging the oysters up and sort the good oysters out from the bad oysters. That's a lovely one, yeah.
So when you look at this, you're seeing an oyster of probably 8 or 9 years old. Is it a male or is it a female? It can choose, it can change. It could be a male today and a female tomorrow.
So it's hermaphrodite, it can switch.
It can. The larvae swims for 10 days and it's looking to somewhere to put its little foot. We provide the habitat and we provide the shell for it.
So we've been down onto the company ground and caught the oysters, and now we're bringing them down to the MCZ area, which is the sanctuary for the mother load of oysters, so that they can hopefully spawn this year and provide us with more oysters for the future. I'm coming back round now onto the mark that we want to be on so that we can relay these oysters.
So Alison, we're in the mother sanctuary now. Explain exactly what that is.
And basically for the next at least 10 years, if not longer, well, hopefully forever, we won't be taking those oysters out. So they're allowed to sit and mature, and we'll get more hard shell in there so that spat can settle on it. And ultimately this becomes the whole feeding area for the rest of the wider marine conservation zone, so that then we can have healthy oyster stocks across the area.
So presumably inside this no-take zone, the oysters will do so well, they'll repopulate the areas outside.
Yeah, well, that's the idea.
Time to release the oysters. So what next? Take them and plot them overboard.
Yep, let's put them in gently, wish them luck.
Good luck. Hey. Good luck in the new sanctuary.
Yeah. We need to start restoring our marine habitats, and to do that we need interventions. And and this is one of the first of the kind in the country. We're repairing the seabed, we're putting the mature oysters on, we're protecting them by law so they can't be taken, and hopefully this will give us hope for the future.
Do you think that the no-take zone is going to be kept intact by all the oystermen?
Absolutely. We need these mother oysters. You can't take everything. You can't smash and grab. You've got to look after the ground.
Back on dry land, and the Hawards are busy sorting oysters brought in from the Thames estuary.
Oyster Club want some whites.
Oh right, that's all right then.
Well, native oysters are what made Mersey famous, but also healthy oyster stocks create a healthy ecosystem. So it's really important that we just do what we can to save them. I know Dad is particularly passionate about it. We can't just let that fade away. It's too important, I think.
We think it's about wildlife and people. For healthy people, we need healthy wildlife. Working to a future for both oysters and for the local communities.